Ladies and gentlemen, when a nation speaks with silence, it's louder than any roar. When India stood tall and refused to sign that ESCO statement, it wasn't just diplomacy, it was defiance. And when Pakistan develops a nuclear-tipped missile in the shadows, the world doesn't blink, but India watches. This isn't about politics anymore. This is about survival, sovereignty, and pride. The stage isn't just South Asia, it's global. And the question echoing across borders is, why now? Why like this? India didn't reject that ESCO statement for nothing. India rejected weakness. Let's be absolutely clear. This was not a diplomatic oversight, not a procedural objection, not a slip of pen or paper. This was a deliberate act of strength. When India walked away from that Shanghai Cooperation Organization joint statement, it wasn't just saying no to words. It was saying no to hypocrisy, no to selective outrage, no to the whitewashing of terror, and no to standing on stage with nations who look the other way when Indian soldiers bleed. It was a moment of thunder in the silence of global compromise. A line drawn, not in sand, but in steel. Because when the world gets cozy with denial, India doesn't sit down, it stands. When phrases like terrorism in all its forms are conveniently watered down to avoid naming the real culprits, when diplomatic courtesy demands that we ignore the pain of Pulwama, the scars of Uri, the echoes of Mumbai 26 events, India won't play nice, not anymore. You see, this isn't 1999. This isn't an India still shackled by hesitation and haunted by colonial self-doubt. This is 2025. A new generation is at the helm, one that remembers its history, but refuses to be chained to it. India rejected that statement because it was designed to pretend that all countries at that table were equals in commitment, in morality, in sacrifice. But they're not. One of those nations harbors extremists, like their state guests. One of them sends proxies across borders in the dead of night. One of them plays the victim while manufacturing chaos. And India is expected to smile, nod, and sign. Not today, not ever again. You must understand the weight of that decision. This was not just about policy. It was a declaration of identity. It was India telling the world, we will not betray our people for the sake of performance. We will not sit at your table and pretend the blood of our soldiers doesn't matter. We will not lend legitimacy to the lies of our neighbors. And yes, there were those who raised eyebrows. The West whispered, China observed, Pakistan postured, but India remained unmoved. Because when your spine is forged in fire, the fire of 1965, 1971, Kargil, Galwan, when your soil has soaked up both sacrifice and victory, you don't bend. You don't dilute your truth for comfort. You don't chase consensus at the cost of conscience. This is what they don't understand about India. Its patience is deep, but not infinite. For decades, India chose diplomacy, chose multilateralism, chose to believe that forums like ESCO, UN, SARC, could create peace through dialogue. But dialogue without accountability is just noise, and India didn't come this far to be drowned in noise. This was a wake-up call for every global platform that thinks India will continue to be the quiet participant, the nation that signs, smiles, and steps aside. No, India is no longer a bystander to its own fate. It is the author. It is the voice in the room that cannot be ignored anymore. And if the room wants unity, then let it begin with honesty. Let it begin with naming the sponsors of terror, not hiding them behind polite language and mutual handshakes. This is the spirit of a country that doesn't seek war, but refuses to kneel. A country that doesn't chase conflict, but will never back down from one. A country that has learned, painfully, powerfully, that silence in the face of injustice is not peace, it is betrayal. And that betrayal will not come from India. So when the world asks, why did India reject the ESCO statement? Tell them this, because the price of peace cannot be our dignity, because the cost of cooperation cannot be selective memory, because signing a lie does not create truth, because India has woken up and it's done being polite. And in this new India, sovereignty is not a slogan, it's a promise to every citizen, to every soldier, to every generation that built this country brick by brick, blood by blood. This wasn't just a diplomatic move, it was a message, loud, clear, unapologetic. India will not be silenced. India will not be sidelined. India will be heard. Pakistan quote, new missile isn't about defense, it's about desperation. Let's not dress it up in diplomatic jargon or military strategy. When a nation that's drowning in debt, isolated on the world stage, and struggling to keep its lights on, suddenly unveils a nuclear-tipped missile, it's not a show of strength. It's a cry for attention. It's the same old pattern. The world looks away, distracted by bigger powers and newer threats, and Pakistan does what it always does when it feels forgotten. It rattles the saber and tries to remind the world that it's still here. But this time, the world isn't clapping, it's watching. And India isn't just watching, it's remembering. Because India has seen this play before. Every time Pakistan's economy crashes, every time it's exposed for harboring terrorists, every time it loses face on the global front, it doesn't turn inward to rebuild. It lashes out to project fear, building missiles while the people go hungry, testing warheads, while international loans keep their system breathing, investing in annihilation instead of education. It's not a strategy, it's a symptom of a system built on insecurity, sustained by conflict, and driven by the obsession to compete with a neighbor it cannot match, not in development, not in diplomacy, and certainly not in dignity. And let's talk about that, because this isn't about a missile, it's about a mindset that chooses intimidation over innovation, that fuels nationalism through hostility, that teaches its children the name of enemies, before it teaches them the name of scientists, doctors or poets, a mindset that sees every Indian success, not as inspiration, but as a threat. You think Pakistan builds nuclear-tipped missiles because it needs them? No, it builds them because it fears what India is becoming. It fears the space launches, the global CEOs, the economic momentum, the fact that India is respected on the world stage, not because of its weapons, but because of its will. Because while one country chooses to climb out of poverty through progress, the other tries to hold the world hostage with its past. And the world is noticing the difference. The United States knows it. Europe knows it. Even countries that once played both sides know it now. The double game is being exposed. The gray zones are shrinking. And Pakistan is being seen for what it has become. A state that refuses to evolve, still clinging to Cold War fantasies, still playing victim while secretly funding chaos, still hoping that every missile launch will erase decades of failure. But here's what Pakistan doesn't understand. India isn't afraid anymore. Not of missiles, not of threats, not of posturing. Because India's strength doesn't lie in retaliation. It lies in restraint, in resolve, in the quiet confidence that it doesn't need to shout to be powerful. But that confidence should not be mistaken for passivity. Make no mistake, India will respond, not out of panic, but with precision, with clarity, with the understanding that deterrence is not just about weapons, it's about willpower. And India's will has never been stronger. Pakistan can parade its warheads on television. It can post videos of missile tests, flexing firepower, while its own citizens beg for wheat and clean water. But those displays mean less and less in a world that's looking toward collaboration, innovation, and stability. Nuclear weapons don't build nations. They only remind the world how quickly a country can fall when it refuses to rise through peace. India, on the other hand, is choosing a different path. It doesn't build to threaten, it builds to lead. While others build missiles, India builds missions to the moon. While others fund destruction, India funds digital inclusion, renewable energy, AI, and infrastructure. While others sink into isolation, India builds bridges, economic, cultural, and diplomatic. And that's why the fear runs so deep across the border. Because for every missile Pakistan tests, India sends a signal to the world. Our vision is bigger than your weapon. Our future is built on dreams, not detonators, on strength, not showmanship. So yes, Pakistan has tested a new nuclear-tipped missile, and yes, it will echo in the headlines for a few days, but India won't flinch, because the ground we stand on is not just guarded by soldiers, it's built by 1 billion people who believe in progress, not provocation. And when desperation launches a missile, India doesn't panic. India prepares. India advances. India endures. This isn't a race of arms. It's a race of legacies. And India knows exactly which one it's leaving behind. This is more than geopolitics. It's a generational awakening. Across cities and villages, classrooms and boardrooms, streets and screens, a quiet storm has been brewing. And now it's no longer quiet. It's rising. You can feel it in the air, in the conversations, in the ambition of 1 billion people who have stopped waiting for validation from the West, from history, or from anyone else. This is not the India that was once known for its silence. This is the India that speaks, builds, defends, and dares. And this time, it's personal. Because for too long, India was told to wait its turn on the global stage, wait for the world to notice, wait for approval. While others advanced, India was treated like a nation still finding its feet. But those days are over, because this generation isn't just standing on its feet, It's running, it's building companies, winning Nobel Prizes, conquering space, rewriting the rules of tech and trade, and it's doing it on its own terms. This isn't a nation of beggars and borrowers anymore. This is a nation of builders, of thinkers, of warriors in uniforms and in code. And it's not just happening in India. The heartbeat of this awakening pulses through the Indian diaspora, around the world, from the halls of MIT to the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, from the labs of Germany to the skyscrapers of Singapore. Young Indians everywhere are rising, unashamed of their roots, unapologetic in their ambition. They're not trying to be someone else. They're showing the world what it means to be Indian. In the 21st century, this is a generation that refuses to be defined by old borders or broken narratives. They won't accept being seen through the lens of poverty, partition, or pain. They've learned to own the past, but they're not imprisoned by it. They've seen what happens when you compromise your identity to be accepted, and they've made a decision. India doesn't need permission anymore. It needs purpose. That purpose is now clear. It's not just about economic growth. It's about global presence. It's not just about military strength. It's about moral clarity. It's not just about technology. It's about transformation. Every corner of India is vibrating with urgency, with potential, with a hunger to leave behind a legacy that isn't just great, but just fair, fearless. This is the India that looks China in the eye and doesn't blink. This is the India that walks out of flawed forms without flinching. This is the India that doesn't need to yell to be heard, but when it speaks, the world listens. This awakening isn't chaotic. It's calculated. It's not driven by hate. It's driven by hope. Hope that this century doesn't belong to any empire, but to every civilization that rises on the strength of its people. And India is rising faster than anyone predicted, and far more united than its enemies hope. And that unity isn't manufactured, it's earned. In every flood where a soldier lifts a child, in every village where a girl gets her first laptop, in every courtroom where justice is served, in every protest where voices are raised not to break, but to build. This is not the awakening of a single leader or a single party. It's the awakening of a soul that has slept long enough, and now that soul is awake. This generation carries the dreams of freedom fighters and the determination of entrepreneurs. They're tired of waiting, tired of excuses, tired of being told they can't, and so they're doing it. Every student who burns the midnight oil, every farmer who holds the land with love, every coder, soldier, poet, artist, they're all part of this revolution. A revolution not in blood, but in brilliance, not in violence, but in vision. And yes, challenges remain, enemies lurk, threats rise, but they no longer intimidate, they motivate, because this generation understands one truth: power doesn't just come from missiles or money, it comes from mindset. And India's mindset has shifted. No longer are we asking, can we? Now we're declaring, watch us transform, watch us innovate, watch us lead, because this is not just India's time, it's India's turn, and nothing, no missile, no threat, no outdated narrative, can stop what has already begun. This is a message to the world. Respect is not given, it's earned. For centuries, India has been misunderstood, underestimated, and at times outright ignored, colonized and divided. It was treated as a passive entity on the world stage, a country to be ruled over rather than respected. But those days are gone. India stands today not as a supplicant, but as a sovereign force, demanding what it rightfully deserves: respect born from strength, integrity, and relentless determination. Respect isn't a handout. It's not a courtesy granted because of power alone. It's the result of a nation showing up every day, in every way, unwavering, unapologetic, and unbreakable. India has earned its respect through sweat and sacrifice, through the blood spilled in wars and the tears shed in struggles. It has earned it through the tireless work of millions who refused to settle for less, who chose to build rather than break, to innovate rather than imitate. And now India sends a clear message: if you want respect, then recognize our sacrifices, recognize the truth of our history and the complexity of our present, recognize the resolve of 1 billion people who will not be bullied, bribed, or bargained away. This is not a threat, it is a fact, and those who mistake this message for arrogance do so at their own peril. For too long, the global narrative tried to paint India as the passive player, the silent observer. But respect demands action. It demands standing firm when the easy choice is to bow. It demands speaking truth even when it disrupts comfort. And India is doing just that, by rejecting half-hearted statements that ignore the real dangers, by refusing to accept terror disguised as politics, by rising in its economic and military power, not to dominate, but to defend and lead. This is the power of earned respect. It changes conversations, it shifts alliances, it forces the world to reconsider assumptions and recalibrate relationships. India's refusal to sign that diluted statement at the SKO was a declaration
that it will no longer be complicit in glossing over threats to its security and dignity. It was a refusal to accept a narrative that painted terrorists as victims and victims as aggressors. This is why respect matters, not just for India, but for every country that understands that peace without justice is a fragile illusion. Respect is the foundation of any genuine dialogue, and if the world wants India to engage, to cooperate, and to lead, then it must come on terms that honor India's sacrifices and sovereignty. Respect is also about being prepared. It is about showing strength without provocation and readiness without aggression. India's military, its technology, its infrastructure, these are the visible proofs that respect is earned by action as much as by words. When India walks into a room, it carries the weight of history, the power of progress, and the certainty of purpose. This is why India's response to threats isn't just military, it's moral. It refuses to be dragged into the abyss of hatred or retaliation that some would prefer. India chooses to rise above the noise, not by shrinking or silencing, but by shining, by creating opportunities, forging partnerships, and building institutions that command global respect. And this respect extends beyond borders. It's about the dignity of every Indian citizen, the farmers, the students, the entrepreneurs, the soldiers. When a nation respects its own people, it demands the world do the same. India's growth, its democracy, its resilience, these are all chapters in the story of respect earned through perseverance and principle. The world must understand that respect cannot be faked or forced. It cannot be bought with temporary alliances or hollow treaties. It must be built on trust, transparency, and truth. And India is ready to hold up its end of that bargain, but only if the world is ready to meet it honestly. This message is loud and clear. India is no longer waiting for recognition. It is commanding it, not with bluster or boastfulness, but with an unyielding commitment to its values and its people. India will not be pushed around, ignored, or undermined. It will be respected, because it has earned every inch of that respect through resilience, courage, and unwavering resolve. And those who challenge India's peace, test its patience, or question its integrity, must remember, respect is not just earned by power, it is protected by pride. And India's pride runs deep. It is rooted in a civilization that has endured thousands of years, in a democracy that stands as the world's largest, in a people whose spirit refuses to break. This is the new India, bold, proud, unapologetic, a nation that knows its worth and demands the respect it has earned. And the world will listen, because respect once earned changes everything. ChatGPT said. And so as we stand at this crossroads in history, it's crucial to understand what's really unfolding beneath the headlines and diplomatic statements. This moment is not just a fleeting episode in global politics, it is a defining chapter in the story of a nation, reclaiming its voice, its power, and its place in the world. India's refusal to accept the diluted narratives that ignore the pain and the truth is not mere defiance, it is a powerful declaration of self-respect and sovereignty. Every decision India makes now is a reflection of a long journey, from centuries of struggle under colonial chains, through painful partitions and wars, to the birth of a vibrant democracy and a global powerhouse. It's a journey marked by sacrifice, by resilience, and by an unbreakable will to rise. To reject the SKO statement was to refuse to let history be rewritten by those who would minimize the threats India faces. It was to stand tall and say, we see clearly, we will not be silent, we will not be sidelined. And in the same breath, when Pakistan develops a nuclear-tipped missile, it's a reminder to the world of the stakes involved. But India doesn't respond with fear, it responds with fortitude, because it knows the difference between power and powerlessness. India's strength lies not only in its weapons, but in the unwavering spirit of its people. It lies in the classrooms, where innovation blooms, in the fields where farmers toil, in the industries that fuel the economy, and in the hearts of those who refuse to accept anything less than dignity and peace. This is more than geopolitics, it's a movement of a generation that has awakened to its destiny, a generation that refuses to be defined by others, or diminished by circumstance. They are the coders, the entrepreneurs, the soldiers, the artists, all carrying the torch of a proud civilization into a future that belongs to them. They are the reason India doesn't bend to pressure or compromise its values. They are the reason India's message to the world is clear. Respect is not a gift, it's a right earned by courage, by clarity, and by conviction. This awakening fuels every choice India makes. It shapes its diplomacy, its defense, its economy, and its culture. It's a reminder that true power is rooted in truth and justice, not in empty words or hollow alliances. And India's refusal to accept less than the whole truth at forums like the SKO sends a signal louder than any missile test. or political speech ever could. Respect, after all, is not merely about recognition on a map or applause on the world stage. It's about the dignity of a people and the integrity of a nation. India's respect is built on a foundation of sacrifice, of those who laid down their lives so others could live free, of those who worked tirelessly to build a better future, and of a collective spirit that refuses to bow. So what does all this mean for the world, for the future? It means that India is no longer the silent giant, quietly watching as others play their games. It means India is a force to be reckoned with, a nation that will not be pushed, pulled, or coerced into silence. It means that India's rise is not accidental, but intentional, fueled by an unyielding belief in itself and its destiny. The world must understand this new reality. It must recognize that India's voice carries weight, because it is backed by substance, not just rhetoric. It must appreciate that India's refusal to compromise on its principles is not obstinance, but strength. And it must realize that attempts to isolate or intimidate India will only strengthen its resolve, because India knows this truth deep in its bones. Peace without justice is not peace at all. Security without accountability is a house built on sand, and respect that is not earned is respect that will never last. As the sun rises on this new era, India stands ready, not just to defend itself, but to lead, to inspire, to shape a world where strength is measured by compassion, where power is wielded with wisdom, and where every nation's voice is heard with fairness. India's journey is far from over. The challenges remain daunting, the threats real, but the spirit of a billion souls, united in hope and determination, is unstoppable. This is the awakening of a civilization reborn, a message to every corner of the globe. India will be heard, India will be respected, India will rise, and when it does, it will change everything.